Researching LGBTQ plus history, an undergraduate scholars program project.
Much of our research was born from the realization that, unlike other nations such as Germany, the Netherlands, and the US, the UK still does not have a museum dedicated to LGBTQ plus history. We wanted to understand what resources the public would be going to in place of an accessible institution like this, and what inadequacies lie in these resources. What would a young Black teen from Manchester Googling LGBTQ plus history find? What would a mom seeking to understand her transgender child find? And what would a gay refugee who had just arrived in the UK find? One foundation of our research is intersectionality, a concept centered on understanding how intersecting identities, such as sexuality, race, or gender, contribute to the overlapping and independent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Essentially, we knew that we could not just look at LGBTQ plus archives as a whole. We had to look at how different identities were represented within them.
To fully encompass this, we made our research question, what is the state of LGBTQ plus archives in contemporary UK society? We would go through our resources and use these two surveys, one on individuals, one on groups, to enter data including people's ethnicity, sexuality, gender, age, location, time, and what theme they were discussing.
We began by looking at the most prominent LGBTQ plus resources to find what queer history the general public would have prominent access to. This led us to Alan Turing, who I'm sure many of you have heard of, as he was the brilliant mathematician who helped bring around the end of the Second World War. However, Turing's historic contributions are emphasised while his sexuality is made an afterthought. Mentions of Turing's homosexuality are often presented only in relevance to the tragic elements of his life, his conviction of gross indecency, castration, and his later death by cyanide poisoning. His story, therefore, has prevalence due to his place in mainstream British history, and as a white cisgender man, his visibility follows much of the traditional presentation of history, LGBTQ+ or not. Turing is therefore a big part of the representation of British LGBTQ+ history, but he is not fully presented, and he doesn't represent a lot of the community. His visibility is in contrast to that of Sandy Hughes.
Later in the project, with much more digging, we found Sandy Hughes, who I'm guessing most people have not heard of. On the left is an image of Sandy Hughes, along with a few shots of the many films in her archive, rewind, fast forward. Hughes is a Black woman, a feminist filmmaker, and a queer person whose filmmaking and photography documented the lives of queer and Black Asian minority ethnic people in Liverpool in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. She is revered by many in the queer community and has made a massive contribution to LGBTQ+ history by preserving the everyday lives and culture of queer and Black Asian minority ethnic people she was surrounded by, which is extremely unique. In contrast to Alan Turing, hers is a positive story of survival, joy, experiences, and culture of the marginalized communities in Liverpool. However, exposure to her work is much more limited than exposure to Alan Turing. Is this because she is a woman? Because she is a Black woman? Because her contributions are specifically to the LGBTQ+ community? Likely it is all three. We can see through our research how the intersection of these identities contributes to even more erasure and oppression, even within the queer community.
Another example of less visible queer history we found is Stephen Whittle, a transgender man and law professor at Manchester Metropolitan University. He appears in our records for his work as a transgender activist over the past 50 years, as part of various transgender support groups such as the FTM network he founded in 1989 and the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, which he became president of in 2007. Whittle's legal work has helped to improve trans people's rights in the UK, and his presence on the 2004 TV documentary Make Me a Man, which followed his and 3 other transgender men's physical transitions, has helped present a wider variety of transgender life and normalise transgender experience and existence to a lot of the television watching public. He lives with his wife Sarah, with who he has 4 children, and in 2005 he was awarded an OBE for services to gender issues. He therefore has importance in LGBTQ+ history for his impact on trans history, but also as a professional role model in the 21st century.
For our project, we took these personal stories and the surveys we had created and turned them into a number of graphs so that we could see at a glance which groups were represented and which ones were underrepresented. This is a graph on the ethnic makeup of different recorded sexualities. We also wanted to look at this data qualitatively. To do this, we retold various interesting stories from within the archives as videos, which we have put on our website.
Through this research, we have illuminated many of the inadequacies within the archives. One example being the presence of much more information on Alan Turing and people in his demographic than on people like Sandy Hughes or Stephen Whittle and people in their demographics. Essentially, in addition to documenting Alan Turing, whose story is extremely important, we should also be documenting art, clubs, culture, and life. We should be recording more bisexual and transgender people. And across all of this, we should be representing much more Black, Asian, and minority ethnic individuals. Recording nuanced and diverse LGBTQ+ history helps people to have a comprehensive and complex understanding of queer life, of their own identities, and of the many groups, individuals, and actions that have brought us to today. Understanding and illuminating the issue is the first step, and we hope that through our research, we have encouraged better and more comprehensive documentation and presentation of LGBTQ+ history. You can find much more of our research and our project on our website. There you can see graphs, and you can discover many stories that you have likely never heard before. Thank you.